Can you hear us now? Wendy, okay, so our co-chair of this committee, can you hear Wendy?
I can hear you now.
I couldn't hear you until like 10 seconds ago.
Yeah, I actually just came online.
So before we get into the first slide, I think everyone's fairly familiar with the Department of Environmental Protection. We are essentially the nation's largest municipal water utility agency in the country. Our commissioner is Rit Agrawal. There is a water board. We have over 6,000 employees. A lot are here in New York City. We're also a huge employer upstate at our watersheds. So we're very well known both upstate and downstate, especially for all of our infrastructure upstate as well. So three different types of flooding. We have stormwater flooding, groundwater flooding, and coastal flooding. Slide. Or changing climate. NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, has reclassified our city as a humid subtropical climate. So sudden powerful storms are being more and more common, and intense rainfall is more common to New York City. The last three major storms that we've had here is, of course, in August 2021, Henry in September 21, Ida. We had over 3 inches of water in an hour. And then, of course, I don't think we called this a hurricane, but it was a extreme weather event, is I believe what they coined it, was September 29, 2023, where we were getting 2.5 inches an hour. If anyone was in Brooklyn or in certain parts of Queens in September of 2023, you'll definitely remember this storm. We'll go to the next slide. Sewers. So sewers work in every rainstorm and protect fully against 98% of rain events. The sewer network here is generally built to handle 1.5 to 1.75 inches of rain per hour. And during rainstorms, the system can get overwhelmed when the amount of water produced by the storm is greater than the capacity of the pipes. So, due to our change in climate, our city is experiencing more frequent heavy downpours that our sewers are designed to handle. Hence, you are seeing flooding go on in like different parts of the city. Also, we also get a lot of ponding here as well after heavy rain events. So we'll go to the next slide. Sewer backups and overflows may not be as common here in Manhattan, but especially other parts of the 5 boroughs. 60% of the city is combined sewers that carry wastewater from your home and stormwater from rains. During rainstorms, the sewer system can get overwhelmed, as we talked about in the last slide. So when the amount of water is produced by the storm is greater than the capacity of the pipes, that's when things overflow. And this can result in backups from manholes, catch basins, and basement sewer connections or overflows into the local waterways. Groundwater flooding. So some areas of the city have naturally high groundwater. After a heavy rain or back-to-back storms, the ground can become saturated. Water seeks its own level. It will find and travel through cracks in a basement foundation or drains. Has anyone in this room ever gotten groundwater flooding? Yeah. Basement flooding? Yeah. All right. Iowa coastal flooding. So coastal flooding can send tidal water back up into the sewer system, resulting in overflows from manholes, catch basins, and basement connections. Tide gates keep ocean water out of the system during high tides or storm surge.
You want the clicker?
Sure. Is it the
big button in the middle advances?
Okay. Right, hurricane season. Hurricanes are powerful, so I think we all know what hurricanes are. From June through November, but it typically begins in August. So southern United States, southeastern United States comes on a little quicker. Here, it's a little later in the summer. This year's season is expected to bring a high number of powerful storms to our coastline, and because of those higher ocean temperatures caused by climate change, we expect those to be greater. So a lot of this presentation, we want to talk about what we can do to prepare, right? The new normal that we live in, like currently, it's not a matter of when, it's just a matter of when Not weather.
Fine.
Should. All right, so the city has a toolkit, large toolkit to combat flooding. Sewers. So again, going back to sewers, our capital plan includes over 8.2 billion for sewer system upgrades. Over 100 sewer projects are in the pipeline for the next 5 years, totaling a $3.6 billion investment. One of the pump stations in Manhattan, fairly close to where we are now, is going to be undergoing an upgrade in just a few weeks. We're really excited about it. It's the Canal Street Pump Station, over 100 years old. That pump station moves sewage over to Greenpoint to our Newtown Creek wastewater treatment over in Greenpoint. So that will be a huge job. Expensive, but we got it covered in a large pool of money, which will go there and to other pump stations and infrastructural sites which needed upgrades. I think that it will be able to pump water 2 times faster than it currently does.
Except for turn.
Oh, that's why. There we go. All right, cloudbursts. So our cloudburst infrastructure captures and holds rainwater from heavy downpours that drops a lot of rain in a short amount of time. Cloudburst management projects can use contained spaces, normally used for other purposes. So like a good example would be an open field or court, right? So the subsurface storage is right under where those kids are playing. The parents are pushing the baby in the stroller. Of course, we have porous concrete in the parking lanes. And then, of course, there could be additional under as well. All right. The unified stormwater rule. In 2022, our agency increased the amount of stormwater new and redeveloped properties must manage on site. Rezonings and or development present a huge opportunity for us to be able to manage the stormwater on site and reduce demand on the city's drainage system. So rule prioritizes the use of green infrastructure, which is the added benefits, of course, reducing the heat, island effect, and supporting wildlife habitat. So, for example, a couple of years ago, the city renewed something called the Green Roof Tax Abatement. We encourage folks to look into that. You get an abatement, for the X amount of space you can have as a green roof. I believe the legislature actually opened that up from, I think it was, you had to have 50% availability on the roof to like put on a green roof, but I think they extended that now to only 25% needed, just so that they could get more people participating in the program. All right, Catherine, you're gonna kill me. I don't have any pictures of our lower Manhattan projects, but coastal resilience infrastructure, of course, protects us against flooding from storm surge and sea level rise. The infrastructure has many forms: raising the height of land, walls on land or in the water, gates on land or in the water, wave breaks, reinforcing shorelines. Alice, I have a trivia question for you. Can you identify?
No.
And-
Saying no.
and to one of the types of infrastructure and resiliency that we have in Manhattan, but that we're currently putting up of these.
What's the question? Raising the height of the land, walls on land, and the water, gates on the land, the little wave.
Which one are we-
Point to an example on the ESCR, LMCR as to what we're doing there.
I mean, I think it's all there. Isn't that on the right? Your elevated boardwalk and your plantings on
Exactly.
the.
That's just in the Rockaway, but yes, I was just, yeah, the gates is what we're putting up. They're actually already up near Peck Slip. We did a demonstration recently.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, what you can do to protect your home from flooding. Converted basements, so sewer backups. Bathroom fixtures should not be located lower than the sewer connection. This can result in raw sewage backing up into basement apartments. Stormwater flooding, so basements located at the bottom of a driveway or below sidewalk level are prone to stormwater flooding and groundwater flooding. Safety. Exit routes are critical in the event of a flood. Know where they're at. Bars on windows are never the answer. You can get trapped in there. Unfortunately, we've seen the consequences of that in previous storms. Reroute downspouts. Disconnecting downspouts from the sewer keeps rainwater out of the system and reduces the likelihood of backups. Direct downspouts away from your building. Just skip a few of these because. There we go. Way to use the water. So you've probably seen some of our ads in city buildings. If you use the bathroom here at Muni, we have these up. Many sewer backups are caused by grease or debris in the sewers. We spend roughly 18 million a year, and was just talking to someone today. We think it's probably higher than that at this point. To degrease the sewers, deal with damage from backups and repair equipment trashed by wet wipes. Taxpayer dollars foot the bill. All right, plan for intense storms. We really, encourage folks to take a look at the weather app on the iPhone. I believe there's a version on the Android as well. Before you go out for the day, especially as we go into the summer, we go into tropical storm and then into hurricane season. Things could change throughout the day. The temperature could change. We could get rain. We could get snow. Who knows what can happen now? I think we saw that in the last 2 weekends. It was like, 80 degrees and then it went to 45 in less than a few hours. Pay attention to high tides. You can also get the NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric app as well for tides if you live coastal. NFIP is the National Flood Insurance Program run by FEMA. Flood insurance through NFIP is available for homeowners, renters, and businesses. This is something, and my former colleague Jordan is probably also very familiar with. We've done a lot of flood insurance reform at the mayor's office with DEP in the last few years. I believe there's a few bills right now that are trying to make flood insurance more accessible and try to keep it away from the predatory insurance industry. It's a little stuck right now, but hopefully things will free up at some point. Flood insurance may be required for some homes and businesses in the floodplain, but all New Yorkers are eligible for NFIP, no matter where you live in. All right, know your zone. All right, the best way to be prepared for the possibility of a hurricane evacuation is to know your evacuation zone and plan your destination and travel routes ahead of time. City officials will tell you when to evacuate through the media and direct warnings like Notify NYC. To all the CB members that are here tonight, how many of you have the Notify NYC app? Awesome. All right, that's great. I saw those thumbs up. Awesome.
I can always flip it.
Yeah, let's just flip it. Yep. Anyone needs to scan that to get the app? All right, we'll keep going.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, and then one more thing before questions. Our FloodNet sensors. It's a partnership with the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, DEP, the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice, as well as Brooklyn College. That's where the bulk of the research comes from. Professor by the name of Brett Bracco has a team of people that go out and they track, levels of rain through the sensors. It allows city agencies to be able to, see where to best allocate resources around flood mitigation. No, they're not going to prevent, these sensors are not going to prevent flooding, but they're very popular. We have 3 in CB1. There's one down on Peck. I believe there's one on Barrack Street, right below Canal. And then there's one up on Lafayette, a little closer to Chinatown. You have 3 active sensors there. All right? Questions?
Thank you.
I'm gonna stop the share.
So questions in the room, buddy? I see Rosa Chang online. Go ahead, Rosa. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I was curious if we could still be added to the FloodNet sensor program.
That's a great question, Rosa. Thank you. So you currently have 3 sensors in CB1. Are you asking to request another sensor?
Correct.
Okay, so, what I can do is I will send Alice, a link to the FloodNet website and you can put in a request, through the online portal. That's how they track those requests. And I'm happy to follow up, on the request, all right?
Awesome. Okay, so it's still open. Thank you. Jordan had told me about it before and I just hadn't gotten to it. So that's perfect. Thank you.
Rosa, you're on the list and your advocacy is knocking you closer to the top of the list.
Oh, yay. Okay.
So hopefully there's good news to share shortly.
Is that going to be the Gotham Park when you say you're
I think that they're looking at locations around that area precisely.
okay, okay, great.
Sports back.
Thank you.
And fundamentally, we look at areas that have the highest stormwater risk. So I know, for example, the kind of South Street area jumps off the chart. So I think where South Street runs kind of towards Gotham Park, I think those are the locations.
Great. Well, Rosa, send us your advocacy program so we can keep track of it also and.
Support it.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I think as to what Jordan was just saying, we have to prioritize every single neighborhood in New York City, all 5 boroughs. We do see a lot of flooding in Lower Manhattan. However, we have to prioritize Howard Beach, different parts of the city where entire homes are being taken over. What we saw during Sandy, but also, we had flooding on Canal Street. A lot of people forget that. So, we,
Not us.
I hear. So anyways, yes, any sort of DEP programming, whether it's green infrastructure, I know we're working on that internally to see what we can do down here. But you do have, 2 major coastal resilience, almost three major coastal resiliency projects just in Lower Manhattan. And that's, we're getting BCR requests all over the city. I know Catherine can probably speak to that, but people are really excited about our resiliency work, so.
I have a question just about the green infrastructure, it comes up all the time where all the green streets in the city are places that allegedly can have green infrastructure. We've talked about this in our own neighborhoods. And it's very unclear when you navigate the DEP site or the park site about what kind of green infrastructure could be implemented and what role DEP does or doesn't play in the implementation. And I'm just curious if there's some way going forward that could be clarified and beefed up on your own, on the DEP website, because, for example, for the friends groups that support these parks, it would be helpful to know, is there an opportunity to, when we redo them, to put in a bioswale, a rain garden? Who might pay for that?
So I think the question around, trying to beef up the website a little bit, be a little more transparent with where we offer the programming, where we don't, is that what you're?
Well, yeah, I guess it's a question.
Sure.
How does it work? Where does DEP come in if you want to add green infrastructure to your green street?
A lot of it is in conjunction with parks. It's in conjunction with another agency that might already have the land, right? Everyone has their own green infrastructure. We can, one example is over at the circle roundabout at the Holland Tunnel. We actually have some land over there where we could potentially put in some planters.
You mean DEP owned land? No.
We have a sliver underground, not at surface level. After looking into it, and thanks to you for kind of getting us connected to them with the council member, we were able to actually find out that we actually have some infrastructure already existing. And so we're gonna see what we can do there with the existing infrastructure. Could we bring in GI for that, right? So I think a lot of the projects are more easily done if there's already existing infrastructure where we can come in and do it.
Right. Great. Yeah, it's just a recommendation that you have a program where you can apply for private buildings can apply for green roofs and you get some sort of
Tax abatement.
tax abatement.
Yeah,
There's nothing like that, it seems, for friends groups to support the many public parks around the neighborhood with similar kinds of programming. It seems like a lost opportunity, it would be great. that
Yeah.
When people make upgrades, that they can, in fact, advocate for green infrastructure, real green infrastructure. Not necessarily tying into some sewer system.
No, of
like,
course not.
a
Yeah.
6-inch.
but Friends of
Rain
Barrett,
garden.
Newman, Barnett, you're right.
Right,
Yeah,
right. So I hope that's something that can be worked in the future. And then I guess I have just Can you ever, and you've been wonderful in taking time, Marty's taken us on a tour with our council member around some of the potential areas for green infrastructure in Lower Manhattan, but can you offer up another tour where we actually look at the pump station? I think people would be fascinated and know very little about it at some point. And also like where the catch basins are, you know, that we had this whole
The whole, like,
conversation about.
EDC, VD, yeah, I know, it's very confusing, but yeah. Yeah.
Why is it that we didn't, like, why doesn't the community board know when there's catch basin work being done? I mean, does DEP works with DEC on this, obviously, but yet.
I don't know what happened beforehand, but, at least since I've come in, I've definitely been trying to make sure there's notifications made on things. Now Tammy receives those as well sometimes. With DDC, if it's a DDC project, even if DEP is involved, but if DDC is installing, of course, the DDC has to go ahead and make those notifications, but we work a lot hand in hand with them on doing notifications. So going forward, I will definitely share that back with DDC. I'll share that back with our team. I think we've already actually flagged this, CB1.
Thank you, yeah.
Of course, I mean, I get it. There's a lot going on. And I think that's why, bringing up the walking tour would be really, I think, crucial and critical, because we're very appreciative of both CB1 and CB2 for writing letters of support on the pump station upgrade. There was a lot of opposition to even doing the upgrade because of the MTA capital work. There's a lot of different projects going on up there right now. So very appreciative of that. And I think we definitely want to make sure you're all kept in the loop.
That's great. All right, well, yes to that tour.
Okay.
All right, any other questions in the room or online? Anybody online? Okay, all right, so it looks like, thank you.
Thank you.
Lauren, Thank
No
you so much. It
no
was
worries.
really
Thank you.
great to see
All right.
you. Thanks
Yep.
so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on. So who isn't in the room? Boy, okay, we are at the Seaport Coastal Resiliency Update. I don't know who is kicking this off, but introduce yourselves and take it away. I think we have it online. Jordan, are you?
Yeah, I can
lead
kick
here?
things off, yeah. We're
Great, thank
doing
you.
the shortest of intros. I guess while we're.
Well, remind everyone who you are, Jordan Salad.
And do I have the presentation or?
you
Yes,
should,
you should.
Okay.
Diane, I know.
Sorry, I need, that's online that I need to move over from your team.
Orion.
Not who joined just yet?
Okay.
I see Lorian on. Hi, everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there in person this evening. Could you move over Lorian, Farrell, and Dylan Fields, please?
Dylan, yes. Who's the other person? Because I'm
Brian Farrell.
not here yet. Yep, happy to. Lori isn't here yet. Is there anybody else, Diana, on the agenda list? Oh, she just popped in. There we go. We've been right on over. Okay, great.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Jordan Salinger, Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice. I know I've been with you for a decade of updates on this work. Today is going to be a little different. Rather than go through all 6, 7 of the projects within LMCR, we're focusing on just a couple of them. So luckily, we'll not have to go through 140 slides and be here until 10:40. There's going to be 60 some odd slides, so it's going to be light work for us tonight. But I think if you are able to,
I am just gonna one sec.
I can freestyle a variety of different topics.
Introduce the team. Then
That might be a challenge. Being here until 10:40. But I think maybe one thing and maybe head off questions and obviously happy to take them as well. One part of our effort is funded the Seaport project through FEMA's BRIC program, Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities. It is a central program that has funded projects across the city, some of the cloudburst efforts, a component of that Seaport project across the entire city. Probably seen by now that program, there's attempts to eliminate it and not just eliminate it going forward, reaching back in fiscal years 20 through 23, remove that funding. I'll just say that it is deeply problematic. And the law department is evaluating any potential recourse as it impacts public safety and effort that we've been moving forward. And so happy to take questions on that, but I know that that's been in the news. And so, I think that's a long way of saying we are figuring it out. And, I would just say personally is working, someone who's worked on a lot of the projects. It's painful, but we'll find a way through.
Can you just get a little more granular on that? 'Cause I think a lot of people are really curious about the Times article and the $42 million. Could you just get a little more specific as to what was taken away and how that specifically affects?
To be clear, nothing has been taken away yet. There was a kind of an internal memo that was spread around, and then there was guidance that was not even directly given to the cities yet, given to DISHES, who kind of is the intermediary, the Department of Homeland Security for the state. So there hasn't been a kind of a triggering event. There's no X project needs to pause. And so, I think our law department is evaluating. The project in the Seaport, you're familiar, there's kind of two phases. There's the design phase, $7-8 million, and then there's the implementation phase. And so what, at least the kind of universal read of the initial memo was that phase 2 is certainly at risk, those construction dollars. What is unknown is phase 1, the kind of design dollars. Essentially, the guidance we got last week was there needs to be a conversation with FEMA about kind of a path forward. So that's why the $42 million was quoted. We don't know about the kind of additional 8. But, I would say in general, there's a lot of unknowns. It was just one memo. There's been kind of no direct I think there's been kind of off the record conversations with FEMA, but nothing kind of you need to pause work on X project or we're taking away.
So what's the cost estimate on the implementation phase?
42 of the total 228.
Oh, that's the.
So it is a, not a giant portion, but kind of a meaningful amount of money
For the Seaport.
for the Seaport.
Right.
Yes. And I think, the numbers range based on, kind of reading the kind of that initial memo, but we're kind of citywide, we're talking over $300 million at risk. Once again, we're using the term at risk because I think it is, they have not conveyed this to us directly.
I'm going to just open it up for any other finance questions because it's kind of, Jordan's opened up that chapter. Does anybody else have questions? In or out
Maybe
of
the memo is just a mistake.
Like Barbara.
One might hope. And I'll add that, the Rise to Resilience Coalition has been doing a lot of advocacy on this. Heard that. And I think as kind of a community board, making it clear what is at risk. And yeah, obviously not just here, but across the city. Work through our evaluation of what FEMA is asking us. I think advocacy is always important.
Okay,
Okay, ready?
thanks very much. Oh, Catherine.
So if it goes to court, will that hold up the start date, even if you don't have all the money in place?
Good question. I think that's part of the evaluation. And I think that is certainly, we've seen that as kind of intent in other federal kind of attempts to claw back money, is that it's not always about, it's about making the process more difficult. And so I think that would have to be part of the evaluation. Is the time lost worth the risk? And I would say certainly losing $300 million should raise to the level of concern. And so we'll see if the law department feels legal action is necessary.
Jeff.
Where, me or?
Yes,
Okay,
Jeff.
Okay. Where is the New York congressional delegation on this?
So they've written a letter, or at least a number of members, and happy to find that and circulate it. I know I saw a letter last week from a broader congressional delegation, at least 60 members on it. Interestingly, I know that the senators from Louisiana, Cassidy, made a pretty direct statement about returning the funding. So I think this is kind of closer to a bipartisan coalition that I've seen on most issues these days. And so, you know, public safety being impacted in red and blue states alike. Again, we are part of the kind of over 5 billion, I believe, that is being is potentially at risk. So bigger than us in some ways, but I think we're monitoring the situation, and I do think that kind of outreach to local, state, federal electeds to make sure that they know that this is impacting work in their districts is important. There's a Tottenville project in Staten Island that is potentially at risk, and so that's an interesting one. And once again, it's across the city, coastal projects, extreme rain projects, heat projects, all with the intent of limiting the loss of life in the next extreme weather event.
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah.
Just wanted to ask about the Army Corps engineer, anything about that in this letter?
US hats.
Yeah,
Project.
the HATS project.
So, you know, I think this was not impacted. It was this was kind of, all the guidance was within FEMA. HATS, many of you know, you have Harbor and Tributary Study, region-wide evaluation of risk. I know many of you provided comments on, I think there were over 3,000 sets of comments that came into the Army Corps. They have overwhelmed them slightly, and they are in the process of responding back to us. I don't think, there's not been kind of a formal response. But I don't know, Catherine, if there's any more to say than that. It has been quiet for a little bit, so I recognize that, but I don't know, Catherine.
That is it. And HATS isn't the only Army Corps game in the city. There are other Army Corps projects that are still ongoing. South Shore Staten Island Seawall, Rockaway, the Atlantic Shoreline work that's been in construction since 2020. And then the Jamaica Bay side of Rockaway. And those projects are all continuing, ongoing. The ones, the non-Atlantic Shoreline one, all of those are in design. And I actively talk to the Corps almost every day. So those are still moving forward and there's no stoppage on those. But that is the status on HATS. They should be responding to comments and continuing outreach from that project. Thanks, Catherine. Just do me a favor whenever you speak
Sorry,
up, if you just
Yeah.
say who you are and where you're from.
Sorry, Catherine Zabilski, Assistant Commissioner with the Bureau of Coastal Resilience at DEP.
Yeah, thank you. All-star cast here. Okay, who's next? You
Look, can we look
pull up the,
at a few slides that will go over light speed?
okay.
Go to the next one. So, very familiar with this one. I'm gonna get this printed on a shirt at a certain point. So give you a sense here, here are the projects, obviously mentioned that HATS study that covers, west side, east side coastal resiliency, not part of LMCR, but chugging along through construction. I'll just mention those two projects on the right-hand side at the top, East Side Coastal Resiliency and Brooklyn Bridge Coastal Resiliency. Both do have federal money, but are far enough along where we don't perceive those at risk at the moment. But yeah, to that first project, Brooklyn Bridge to Montgomery Coastal Resiliency, a $350 million project. Many of you know are impacted by the construction, series of flip-up gates, other deployables along the water. I'm not going to be talking about it today. I believe we're coming back in May for an update on that one. Seaport Coastal Resiliency, mentioned before, $228 million funded by City Capital and that FEMA BRIC grant. The next effort that we're going to have, I think, just only one slide on today, the Financial District and Seaport Climate Resilience Plan, a longer term effort The battery coastal resilience, $200 million, all city capital, so not at risk. And then the two projects from Battery Park City Authority, they're south and northwest, funded through their bond, so also risk. And so usually when I give this, I don't have to say what's at risk, what isn't, but those are the times we're in. Also wanted to give this slide to give you a sense, for a long time, we had these kind of construction complete bars that went well into the future. We're in the future now. And so, we do have a number of these projects that will be completed. Brooklyn Bridge, Montgomery Coastal Resilience and Battery Coastal Resilience, both in 26, I believe ESCR around that time as well. The South Battery Park City Resiliency Project will win this race, and closer to the end of 25 will be completed. We'll be talking about the effort for Seaport Coastal Resilience towards 2029 end date, and the massive FIDI Seaport Master Plan, which will trail behind that. So that gives you a sense of where we are. But once again, I think in some ways a testament to all of our patience and the hard work of this community board that we've gotten to this point, and that we have constructed projects. So much more work to be done, but there's significant progress we've done together. And with that, Andrew.
Yeah, we're gonna get started with Elizabeth Thompson Baycom.
So we have a few
Thank you.
presenters, I know.
Elizabeth,
Sitting at the table.
you can sit at the table if you're more comfortable. If there's several of you, you can stand up front, whatever is better for you.
Lines there. I know I speak softly, so I need to be somewhere near this.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Oh, good board.
Responsibility.
It sure is.
Thanks, Jordan.
All right,
That was great.
I think I'll sit here.
No problem.
Don't be shy. You can sit at the table. Seats aren't assigned.
All right, so thank you. I'm Elizabeth Thompson. I am the project manager for the Seaport Coastal Resilience. Thank you for having us back today. We're excited to share the big one in the middle.
Yep.
Okay. Just give an overall update on where we are. One of the things we've been saying on this project is we're going to come early and often. So we're going to be doing that. We're true to that commitment. We're still early in the data collection and the getting the preliminary design and schematic stuff together. So we're going to share what we found. We're going to give a recap to remind everybody that we were here. Well, we had a workshop in December, and then share some of the preliminary findings, like the interior drainage. That's something we heard last time to, really hone in on and give an update. So it's going to be a lot of the nuances, but that's because we really are taking you through this process. One of the things I want to reiterate as we go through the schedule is the importance that we're putting on the community. We understand that we need to do this together. We need to hear the impacts that you're seeing from our design. Tammy has shared with us, I want to make sure everybody is clear that the alignment is still in flux. There's still many areas that we need to work out from an engineering feasibility standpoint. We know where it will be going for the most part, but what that looks like, we're not past a point of return. We are still looking to hear input. We're going to be you'll hear from Ryan of our future events in the next coming months. And then as we collect all that and put it into a design and bring it back to you for input and move forward to PDC and LPC, and then take it to SHPO, because we are in a historic district and we need to be very respectful to what that is and how that looks. And so that design will need to take all that input and continue to evolve. So one of the things we've done is also extended the schedule. We're recognizing that this is something that can't be rushed. We need to collect this feedback. We need to continue to dig deep underground and understand all the utilities and constraints and the feasibility, again, from an engineering standpoint. So we're still collecting that information and we'll be sharing it as we go. Today's highlight is really going to be a lot about the interior drainage and then some of the design that we see foreseeable. There'll be a lot more discussion on the waterfront as we're still trying to uncover a lot of the things that are underground in the inland portion. All right, so just reminding us where we are, as Jordan showed, we are in the South Street Seaport District. We're part of the Lower Manhattan Coastal Resilience. One of the complexities, as we've been saying, is that there is this urban environment that we need to work through, as well as the waterfront and historic components. So all of that coming together and very front of mind with many constraints and many things to consider. So reminder of where we are, we're from Brooklyn Bridge, just abutting the BMCR to the north, and down to John Street, wrapping in towards water, meeting an existing elevation of 11. So the FIDA Seaport Master Plan is an independent project that is outward, and ours stays along the shoreline. So just reiterating what our project goals are, is that we are looking to protect the seaport with a flood protection of 11 for 2100 tidal flooding and near-term storm. So what this means is, you'll hear a lot of this tonight, is what we're raising the elevation from the existing elevation of 6 along the waterfront to protect the seaport from tidal flooding as well as current storms. We expect to see flooding as early as 2050. And so we're trying to respond. This project is what they call near term, and we meet the FIDA at the waterfront and collaborate, and we coordinate often to make sure that the two can go hand in hand, because our immediate goal is to tackle the near-term storm surge and the 2100 tidal. So that is the reason that we are going from the existing elevation of 6 at the waterfront to 11. And then the FIDA will come and build upon this and protect in the future. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ryan. Do you want me to click, or do you want me to?
If you wouldn't mind clicking, that'd be great.
It work.
So as Elizabeth mentioned, Ryan Walsh, FHI Studio, part of the consultant team. As Elizabeth mentioned, we had a community workshop back in mid-December. We had great turnout. I recognize lots of folks in the room that were there, but it was a good diverse crowd. People found out about the meeting in lots of different ways. There was a presentation where we provided an update on the design framework and engaged with folks around tables, asking questions about personal experiences, how folks want to engage with the infrastructure and the project moving forward. You know, what are your ideas for placemaking? We solicited a lot of input on maps. So here are some high-level themes of what we heard that night. One of the big themes repeated again and again was the importance of greenery and canopies to provide shade from the sun. Also, in the context of whatever is installed needs to be well maintained and part of a really high quality public realm. There were calls for seating opportunities to activate spaces, as well as a combination of active and passive programming along the waterfront. People had lots of different specific ideas of what could go along that waterfront area. Many calls for opportunities to interact with the waterfront, both from the land side and the water side. You know, calls for opportunities to play for all ages, and also green infrastructure and stormwater drainage. So looking ahead to some community engagement next steps, we are tentatively, we have planned a stakeholder workshop. This will be the second one we've done. It's tentatively scheduled for May 14th. We're going to confirm that in the very near future. We're just working out some final details. The first stakeholder workshop, walking tour of the area, had been primarily for CB1 members. We heard you last time that this should be open to the public. And so that is our plan. We're going to make this an accessible event for all community members. Following that stakeholder workshop, we're going to be holding a community workshop in the early summer. And here we're going to present a more fleshed out design update and really, again, work with the community on getting input on the public realm design. That will happen before the summer recess. Coming back in the fall, We're going to come back to community board one, present what we heard, and present material that will ultimately be part of an LPC PDC conceptual submission. So you will get a chance to see that again before that submission happens. And I will now turn to Tristan.
Do you want to, you want to stay and so do it?
Thank
You want all the power.
I am Tristan Porto, lead landscape architect from AECOM, part of the project team. So I'm going to give you guys an update on where we are with the alignment and some just kind of general updates on design and what we've been doing since we last met with all of you at the workshop back in December. And we'll just do a little refresher on some of the key principles of what we're going for in this project, which first one we've been touching on quite a bit is the flood reduction, risk reduction, which is not just about, as we were saying, flood protection, but also improving the interior drainage. It's a two-part approach. We're also trying to maintain circulation, improve it wherever we can, for bicycles, for pedestrians, and also for maintenance access throughout the project, to make sure it's well maintained. And, you know, we're in the historic district, so making sure we're celebrating and kind of enhancing or protecting the historic character. As far as waterfront access, we want to improve it wherever we can and make sure we're maintaining views and access that already exist. And then, you know, integrating placemaking within all of this infrastructure. So it's not just infrastructure, it's also public realm and improvements and things that you can use. We've also been kind of continuing to develop our flood alignment toolkit, which I think at the workshop, we had showed quite a few different options, and we're kind of narrowing down on what we think is the best approach for the project. So you can see here, first some passive solutions, then the deployable solution on the right. First one is the raised edge, which is mainly focused along the waterfront areas of the project, Jerry Driscoll, which is like what Elizabeth was mentioning earlier, is just raising the grade. And then behind that, I'll show you some slides where we're kind of working with topography to make sure that we're maintaining views and access and placemaking throughout the project. We're also evaluating a glass-topped flood barrier option, which we're still kind of going through the pros and cons of it regarding maintenance and durability. But we like it as a project team because it promotes visibility and safety throughout the project. We're also, you know, like I mentioned, always looking to integrate placemaking. So if we have a barrier, we always want it to do more than just be a barrier. Maybe it's seeding, maybe there's some planting. And then the final is the deployable one. So we have locations where we have, you know, critical pedestrian access, South Street where we have to get cars through the project. In those places, we're bringing the grade up to 8.5. And then on top of that, we're going to have a deployable floodgate that flips up by that 11 protection level when needed. Here's our current alignment. It's kind of shifted, as Elizabeth was saying, between the last time we met with you. There's little pieces that have shifted. It's essentially where it was previously. But as we learn more and more about the site, the neighborhood, the infrastructure underground, we're having to kind of continually adjust this. And we're going to continue to do that as we speak with you guys about the project. But essentially, it's inland, where the tie-in is on the south side at Titanic Memorial. We're looking at kind of that approach of placemaking within a barrier. It's going to be low as it ties into that 11 elevation. As we kind of weave through the district, we're considering that glass topped option or something similar with placemaking. And then again, like I mentioned, so we're crossing South Street, that's where we'd be looking at these flip up deployables. And then along Jerry Driscoll, that's where you're getting into that raised edge approach. And then just to talk about the height of intervention, how high the protection needs to be, how high the infrastructure needs to be is based on the existing grades of the area. You can see the seaport, which we'll talk about quite a bit here tonight, is that it's, you know, it's a bathtub effect. It's a bowl. The dark purple is really the low point. Along the waterfront, we're having to raise up about 5.5 feet, 4.5 feet, kind of depending where you are. You can see that's kind of one of the higher raised areas. And then as we weave around Imagination Playground, it's 5.5. And as we tie back into the 11, which is the protection level, it just tapers gradually down to that 11 and kind of disappears into the grade, both there and at the Brooklyn Bridge connection. And just to remember, for everybody, there's a lot of constraints and considerations. This is really what we've been kind of sorting through over the past few months in the project. There's a lot of utilities internally, the project along the coastline or the waterfront as well. We have subways running through underground. There's emergency access for ambulances that we need to maintain, fire access, access to all the buildings, the windows, pedestrian access points. Along the waterfront, it's very similar. We also add the complexity of the FDR structure overhead. There's also a lot of DEP infrastructure. We have CSO outfalls. We have regulator. We have lots of infrastructure like that along the waterfront. And then also, there's a lot of pedestrian and vehicle access. Like I mentioned, you have South Street, you have the bike lane along the East River Esplanade. So the project has to really sort through all of that and make sure that we're not disrupting or make sure that we're maintaining all this critical infrastructure. And we've kind of been developing this, along with our toolkit, just some initial ideas of how this project can be, put in place. And we're looking at this in two buckets. It's really the inland approach and the waterfront approach. It's like two portions of the project that are a little bit different. So inland, we're really trying to weave infrastructure kind of carefully through the historic Seaport District, be as minimal as possible. And then on the waterfront, we're going with the raised edge on top of the existing bulkhead, which on the right behind that bulkhead that we're looking to kind of step up. So it's not just a wall, it's terrace environment that has a lot of opportunity for placemaking, programming. And then, like I mentioned, on the inland side, we're looking at potentially glass top barrier if feasible to kind of open up and leave it transparent. Also potential for, cladding or programming kind of placed on top of that infrastructure. So it's not just a wall, it's seating, it's a bar, and a table like we show there. And then along the waterfront, again, if we're terracing up, we want to make it a usable space. So looking at seating, step seating, kind of like you have at the Tin Building on the outside of Pier 17 right now. Then it's shade, so shade trees, shade canopies, kind of both of those ideas we're looking at. I'll talk about that in a moment. But first, we'll just touch on a bit, interior drainage is something we haven't discussed yet on the project, but it is a critical component of the project. As we're raising the protection level, we're creating even more of a bathtub effect, so it's critical that we address the interior drainage as part of the project. And just highlight, it's kind of another way of looking at the height of intervention, but you can see again that bathtub effect within the project. We have a really low spot right in the middle of the Seaport District. And I'm going to call on Helder from our project team, who's our interior drainage expert, to just talk through what we've been looking at as far as this and the solutions we're going to be proposing.
Interesting. I'm Helder Almeida with ACOM. I'm leading the interior drainage study for this project. And we would like today to give you a highlight or to highlight the work that we developed so far on this matter. Essentially, we did modeling of the sewer system with various inputs, particularly the tidal input, assuming a certain level of sea level rise or various, and a rainfall amount that we selected as a 5-year rainfall and consistent. It is consistent with the selection of design criteria that was used in other projects in Lower Manhattan. This particular diagrammatic figure is trying to show that with future sea level, even when we build the coastal barrier, we will still have that future sea level acting on the only CSO outfall that serves our project area. So, and that CSO outfall currently has tide gates, and those tide gates will be closed when they're facing a higher tide level that is just going to keep increasing with rising tides and sea level. So the existing capacity that the system has to discharge to the East River is going to keep decreasing as sea level rise increases. And therefore, as years go by or as sea level rise materializes, we're going to lose existing sewer system capacity to discharge. And that needs to be mitigated somehow by replacing those gravity processes with some form of, and we looked at various alternatives, and we are considering and most inclined to consider a pumping solution to mitigate that lack of gravity flow that is going to keep decreasing as sea level rise materializes. And that's what this diagram is attempting to exemplify. Um, So based on the modeling work that we did, again, for the design criteria or background conditions that I mentioned, in this case, we looked at 2080 sea level rise and a 5-year rainfall. NOAA second quartile, 24-hour duration. Again, consistent with other projects in the vicinity. And we assessed what would be the extent of flooding if we were to just build the coastal flood barrier that would prevent overland flooding to, go over the bulkhead and reach the depressed area in the middle of our project area. And that's what you see on the left. If we just do that and don't implement any interior drainage elements to the project, we would still see depths of 4 to 6 feet of flooding along South Street. Now, through iterations with the model, we tried to understand what would be the most efficient measures or elements that could be implemented to mitigate this flooding. And we know that the adjacent areas are going, particularly the area south of us is going to be subject to that same tidal inundation. So, and there's an element of the sewer system, it's an interceptor that conveys water from all around the west side of Manhattan to the Manhattan Pump Station. And that is all represented in the model that was used. If we don't somehow, and that interceptor is going to be surcharged in certain locations. So in our area, there's a possibility that surcharge could rise to the surface and create flooding in our area that we just protected with the flood barrier, with the flood barrier. So we are proposing various elements of, we call it near surface isolation. It's not a new concept, and we are going to propose pressure proofing all the access manholes that give access to the interceptor, so that this case, the surcharge, when the interceptor surcharges, doesn't allow that pressure, that water to come and reach the surface. There are a few other elements for all the sewer connections that cross the barrier to the unprotected areas, to the adjacent unprotected areas that will also be isolated with protect walls or other methods. And so that's one of the two major elements of what we're proposing, is just isolate all the potential contributions of water migrating from the unprotected area to the area that we're protecting. The other component here is we will still have some bathtub effect, because we're talking about a scenario in which we have a high tidal event in the future with compounded with sea level rise, and we also have a concurrent 5-year rainfall. And like I described in the beginning, the only CSO outfall that we have to discharge to the East River is not going to be able to do that because it's subject to a much higher tidal effect. So by gravity, therefore, we are considering a pumping solution that would somehow replace that lack of gravity flow that could reach the East River. And that's essentially a summary of the work that we did so far.
Thanks. So,
You got the hard part. Yeah.
And now I'll pass it on back to Tristan.
So we have some further design updates just to show some of the other things we've been working on the project, and you can see a few things highlighted here I'm going to touch on. First being the northern tie-in, the project's northern end, how we touch with the BMCR, how we connect up to the Brooklyn Bridge on-ramp. And then talk about some connections to other projects in the area, also some studies we've done around shade and planting, and then maintenance and kind of access to the project holistically. So first up is that northern tie-in. I'm gonna jump into these areas, talk about how we're crossing South Street, how we're tying in, and what the BMCR tie-in looks like. So first off, just showing you a plan view of the way our tie-in crosses South Street. It's immediately adjacent to the BMCR deployable tie-in that goes also up the bridge ramp. There's a fixed barrier that runs and as I've been mentioning, kind of ties into 11, just tapers down as you go up the ramp. So we have a view you can see in the purple cone there from street level, of a human view of what this infrastructure is starting to look like. So you can see on the left there in orange, that's the Seaport project. So we're, as I was mentioning earlier, we're bringing the grade up to 8.5. That's the flip up deployable here that would, oops. So when it flips up, it's going to be at that 11 elevation. It's down at 8.5. That allows vehicles and pedestrians to transverse over it. And you can see how it just sort of tapers up to the top and ties in at 11. On the right, you can see the BMCR project. It's at a higher elevation. It's 16.5. That's because that project is projecting to a different level than we are.
It's not gonna be wider than sort of that image. I know I've outlined not supposed to fast, but the image looks very narrow. And the picture above that says Race Street deployable looks like it would be more like a far wider impact on the pedestrian realm than the Race Street and deployable.
Some of the icon, like in the circle.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's just embellished, so you could see that it's being raised.
Yeah.
Okay.
It isn't that much on at this particular location. It is only like 1.5 inch raise. Remember, we're going from, you'll see more.
okay, just curious.
Yeah, and we have some sections to explain it, but yeah, it's because a lot of it's handled just by grading in the street, the gray area, that's part of this infrastructure. The orange is just representing the actual piece that flips up the deployable. So we have a couple sections to help illustrate this too. So first I'm gonna start with the A section, which is down the middle of the street, down South Street. So that's what you see here. So we're running essentially, parallel to the waterfront up South Street. At the top, that's the condition. It's not existing yet, but that's the condition that is coming as part of the BMCR project. So you can see their passive sill is at 7, represented in the pink here. So you can see the level of grading they're having to do. And then at the bottom, you can see the Seaport project bringing the sill up to 8.5 and how we're kind of tying in down to the BMCR project. The flip up deployables there and the kind of the orange and then the hatched area is the grading. So that's us kind of gently bringing the street grade up to meet that 8.5, and we're keeping it 4.5% or less so that we're fully universally accessible throughout the project. And then similarly, we have another section across South Street at the deployable. So you can again see at the top the existing condition where the street is now down at 5.6, and then we're bringing the grade up to 8.5. Again, maybe a little clearer in the other one, you can see longitudinally how that's coming up, but it's a similar approach across the street. So we're at the other side, we're just doing a subtle grading to make sure it's accessible up and over and pedestrians can cross the street. And then we touch on like a bunch of projects we've been drawing inspiration from in the area. These projects have materials and design elements that we're having to tie into or call upon. So I think you're all quite familiar with these, but East River Esplanade is, this is where we're working. So there's, a set of materials, furnishings, pavers that we're going to be calling upon as part of the materiality of this project. There's the Peck Slip project right across the streets, looking at some inspiration from there, from some of the granite pavers. The other thing I really like to talk about is the Brooklyn Bridge Esplanade project, the BBE, which, there's currently a waterfront get down that was constructed as part of that project. There's some bulkhead restoration work done under that project, but it's kind of overlapping with our project. So we're going to be drawing inspiration upon that project because that also went through community engagement back in 2018, 2019. You can see here in purple, the area of overlap with our project, that our Seaport project overlaps with the BBE went further up, but within our project, there was quite a bit of programming within the BBE project that we're overlapping with. We want to call upon that previously vetted program and see if we can find ways to implement that within our project. So a few things we've been thinking about is what we highlight here. Adult fitness was part of that. There was a splash pad. There were some open areas kind of just for fitness and gathering. Our project is, bringing the grades up. It's terracing. So we're trying to find ways that we can implement this program within those terraces. The BBE project kept the levels at the existing grade. The BBE project also was doing some repair work to the existing pier down by the Brooklyn Bridge. So you can see on the left there, the existing conditions that exist out there today. There's some like large wooden planks that are a bit weathered. Under the BBE project, the proposal was to replace it with steel grating, similar to see other places along the waterfront and the High Line. I think has that same exact material they were proposing in the project. So we're, as a project, planning to do some level of restoration where we repair the surface, either use that steel grating in the same way that the BBE did, or we could look at also a recycled plastic lumber that we've been discussing with the Parks Department as an alternative, if that's something the community desired. And we have an additional slide just to speak to a little bit of the design studies we've been doing at that location. I know this is really a critical component that the community cares quite a bit about. We heard a lot about this get down and the access to the waterfront at our workshop last time around. So you can see here is from our working model for the project, which is really about topography and grading and how we're overcoming a lot of the challenges from an infrastructural standpoint, flood alignment standpoint. One thing we're looking at the pier is because we're keeping it at the existing grade, just replacing that surface condition. We want to make sure that there's good access down to the pier and also good connectivity to the get down that was built as part of the BBE project. So you can see here in pink are just kind of circulation showing where pedestrians could flow through the space. So one thing we're studying and looking at is making sure we can get pedestrian access easily down to that pier. The pier is right here. You can see it comes out. So the idea we're studying is bringing a pathway gently graded down and around to the pier. And then because we're bringing grades up, looking at a way to kind of create a bit of an amphitheater on the backside of the pier so that you can sit, look at the Brooklyn Bridge, which is right here. It's got beautiful views of the bridge. We're also maintaining or creating a new access point from the pier over to the get down so that you have full access right into that from 2 levels. You want to continue along the Esplanade, you can say the higher level, you can also come down. We're trying to create this extended experience between the get down and the pier, making it feel like a larger, more connected, contiguous space. We've also been studying shade. We heard quite a bit about that from the community last time we met with you in December. So we've done some sun shade studies across the project. And what we see here in orange are part of our findings of just the areas that we expect to have pretty significant sun exposure throughout the day in the hotter months of the year. So a lot of focus along the Jerry Driscoll Walk. If you're outboard of the FDR, there's quite a bit of sun. Same at Pier 17, Imagination Playground, and then portions of Fulton Street and the Titanic Memorial at the northern tie-in. Those areas either don't have large buildings nearby shading it, there's no trees, quite a bit of sun exposure. Just give you a glimpse of one spot. So we studied Jerry Driscoll quite a bit. It's a bit complex because you have the FDR structure overhead, but what we learned is throughout the summer, from 9 a.m. till about 4 p.m., closer to 5 p.m., you have full sun throughout the day in that area. It's not until about 6 o'clock where you start to see the FDR actually shading the Esplanade. So it's a critical area, we think, especially here, elsewhere, there's a lot of use. We need to make sure we're providing shade. But we've been looking at 2 things. We've been talking quite a bit with New York City Parks about this. So we're considering shade trees and canopies where it's not feasible to plant a tree. It's critical also along the waterfront to make sure we're using durable materials. There's a lot of corrosion caused by the sea salt spray. Same with the trees. They also need to withstand those kind of harsh marine environments. So we've already done some analysis and worked with parks and kind of identified a list of trees that we think could survive and do well in these conditions. And this is based on recommended lists from parks and from their native plants guide and suggested plantings that they have, street trees. We've also started doing some design studies on what the infrastructure of planting a tree along the waterfront might look like. Calling upon some examples of recent New York City Parks projects, including the East Midtown Greenway that planted trees in sort of a similar condition, because we're raising the grade up, 5 feet along the waterfront. We're not planting just right into soil. This is all infrastructure along this bulkhead. We actually have to, if we're planting trees, we have to actually create essentially a container to put them in so the roots don't impact that flood protection system. So that's what you're seeing here is we're looking to create a kind of a contiguous soil volume as much as possible so that these trees have a good medium to grow into, and then using topography and just natural sloping to let rainwater and precipitation just kind of naturally irrigate the trees, just flow right in through permeable pavers and just the tree openings. And then just one final thing, just to give you guys an update, we've been coordinating quite a bit across many agencies on this project. One we've been talking to quite a bit is DOT about the FDR. And the FDR goes over a major portion of our project. And they need to inspect their columns, they need to do repairs, so we have to maintain that access after our project's done. So you can see here, we've done a bunch of studies and talked to them quite a bit about making sure that their inspection vehicles can get access to the full structure within our project area. So you see in orange kind of the areas that we're trying to, orange is the area I guess the truck would reach, but the white areas are where the trucks would go through the project. So we're still kind of navigating this process with them, but we're also trying to make sure that we maintain pedestrian access. It's not only about maintenance, it's also about pedestrians, bicycles, making sure we meet all of these different criteria about the project. So I think with that, that's the last update we have. They kick it back to Ryan to remind everybody about our upcoming community engagement.
Final slide, just previewing that we will have information very soon about May 14th stakeholder workshop. And then beyond that, so for that event, we'll have a chance to go out into the field and look at a lot of these issues and challenges on the ground, talk about them in person with the broader community. And then, as I said earlier, we'll be back early summer for a community workshop. And then in the fall, back to CB1 with a package of materials that would ultimately go to LPC PDC.
Okay, wow.
I have one quick question. Does anybody know what the design elevation?
I'm sorry.
For Newmarket here?
Stop, just a minute. Are you part of the
Public.
are you part of the public or no? Are you part of the presentation team?
No, I'm just-
Okay, we'll get to you. We have a rule here that these, hard working community board members go first. And then public. So just hang in there and we'll get your question answered. Thank you.
Maybe.
Okay. Thank you to this team and
there.
for the extraordinary showing. And yes, Jordan.
We do
go
have
ahead.
one final slide.
Oh, perfect. All right.
Apologies.
Alexis is maybe in the bathroom, but I don't know if Diana, if you're able to present the final slide or if Alexis was.
Is it in here?
It was one past this one.
Okay, let's see what I got. There we go. Is that it?
That's the one.
To your rescue.
I will give a little introduction, and I don't know who's in the room, if Alexis or Aaron is in the room, but Tammy, Alice, this is something and part of what we discussed as part of FIDI Seaport. After our CCLM battery workshop, we have discussed different mechanisms for introducing the project to the broader public and different kind of tabling and different kinds of events that we can do. So this is the rationale here and what we're looking at, but I'll pause and let Alexis or Aaron, if they're in the room, jump in.
Alexis had to step off, Diana, apologies.
Then do you want to take some Seaport questions and maybe we'll come back to FIDI Seaport?
Sure, absolutely.
Sure. So, okay.
Michael,
Are you,
hands
okay,
up
hang
online.
on. Okay, so in the room, do we have any questions on any aspect of this hour-long presentation? Surprising, okay. Yes, I see. Tammy.
So much of the presentation shows a couple trees, right? It's a little confusing for us perhaps not to throw the Battery Park City Authority under the bus there, but we fought for more trees along the edges where the walls were going, and we're told that we couldn't necessarily have trees so close to the wall. So I'm encouraged to see more trees close to the walls that you've got here. But it is still very hard surfaced. Almost everything other than the couple of shade trees that you've shown. Was there any look or conversation on any kind of more natural type of resiliency measures that could be done to provide something more than hard surfaces which add to the heat? And it looks like you're replacing wood with recycled plastics or metals. And everything is very hard surfaced. It's not that I have anything against people who like to go skateboarding down skate parks. But we have one of those beautifully done in Gotham Park. So I was hoping that when we're looking at the spaces that you're looking at here, that it would actually be more park-like and green versus walls and steps and hard surface. Any,
Yeah, I think I'd like to start it, Tristan, and then just say that this is part of, that's great feedback. I think we are still trying to work out exactly with parks where plantings can go and how to avoid having it all seem very hardscaped while balancing the shade structures and infrastructure and clearances with the FDR and the grade and the terrace I'd like you to speak to, Tristan, because that's part of how we have to get to the 11 and overcome that 5 foot. But we've heard you loud and clear on trying to work with parks rather for where the plantings can be.
Yeah, well, just on the terracing side of things, the one thing to note, and maybe the section might help too, under the FDR is that a significant portion of the working area is under the FDR, which is not gonna get any rain. As I showed, it doesn't really get sun except for the outboard area. So there's significant portions of our project where the plants just don't live in general, so that those terraced areas are in those areas, that those areas, regardless of what we wanted to do, we can't plant, so they will not grow under there. But we are looking quite closely at the outboard area on the top side, you know, where I was showing where those trees go. And we've had quite a bit of coordination with parks. We're talking about that right now. The focus has been on shade trees and shade canopies. But we're continuing these discussions, and it revolves around maintenance. We want to make sure that what we do can survive and can be maintained long term.
Be near a water source, right? I think that was one of the contingents.
I'm raising the hand to recall myself. Okay, okay. So I have a few questions, on the point of, you know, sort of a lot of hardscape. I know we've asked for it in the past, and I hope that you can provide some sort of understanding of what the impacts on the carbon footprint are. How many linear feet do we have of stuff, concrete and such? What are we really talking about in terms of impacts? Another question, and I don't expect this answer necessarily tonight, but we would like to have that. And then, what is the maintenance plan? You know, how many years do we forecast that these walls and these deployable gates will actually endure? And what's the expectation, you know, in terms of when they don't? That would be another big picture question. You know, the speed of this, and I know we talked about it, is interesting. I mean, it's really only 5 or 6 months, at least on your timeline, where you'll be going to PDC and LPC, and SHPO, I guess. I'm a little unclear. I think you did define this earlier, that conceptual design is defined as a 10% of design period, whereas the 30% design is something else. What is, when you come back in, I guess it would be, you said the fall of 2025, a few months from now, and you'll go to LPC and PDC and show us the same presentation. What is that? What percentage of the design will be done?
So the way we've been looking at this has been the stagger between engineering and the urban landscape design. They're lagging a bit as we start to uncover and decide what can be done in that. So we're expecting to have about 30% of engineering done, and I'd say urban design somewhere around 15 to 20.
That's a little confusing. I mean,
well, because I think a big part I wanted to add is that we don't want to get too far down the road of the design before it goes to LPC and PDC and SHPO. Like I said, we have to be very conscious of the historic district. And I mean, I've personally been on a project where SHPO comes in towards the end, and we just have to go back to square one.
But if the engineering requires a 6-foot wall, you know, crossing over Fulton Street, but the urban design aspect seems like that might not be a particularly favorable idea. How do you join those two together?
The gap for the engineering for that example isn't that far, right? It's more of the top side elements that need to be worked out, the maintenance operations, things like that. The engineering is getting layered in pretty much already with constant agency coordination. But Catherine, you want to?
So the answer really is 30% design that you'll be showing at that point.
That would be the intention.
Okay, that's helpful. I want to just open this up also to other members. I mean, we shared the fact that we received from the Seaport Entertainment Group, who are represented here, quite a elaborate review of your proposal. And I want to make sure that you have an opportunity, if you had any questions, or whether you felt this update answered those questions. We have all your, the Seaport Entertainment Group, George and Lucy here, spent quite a bit of money, I think, on hiring their own engineers. I think it was Sterling Engineers to do a review of this. I don't know if it's good or bad. I don't know what you all think of it, but I just want to make sure we acknowledge it. It was quite a hefty piece of work. And of course, these are neighbors who have a lot of investment in the area. So I just want to make sure if you have questions or concerns,
I don't think the design issue today really addressed anything you said. Saw for the first time something dealing with stormwater. That was, probably thorough enough for us to really judge. And certainly they talked about Driscoll and sort of the Brooklyn Bridge ramp connection and not get what they're doing. So really no other questions we have, but I think we have to address those comments soon.
So I guess just in terms of being the community liaison here, for better or worse, is there an ability to, and I'm not sure who I'm addressing this to, Elizabeth, to answer those questions more fully so that they do have answers, whether they like them or not, going forward, or?
I mean, the answer is yes, but I think EBC should deal with
I
that.
think we got your comments, George. We certainly have been looking at them, and these are things that we've also considered during our evaluation of the project. So we are looking at your package that you sent us, and we'll come back to you. And the first time when we did come to you was really to start to understand your operations. And that's why we actually showed them again what the public has seen, and to really start to address the operational nature of you being a major tenant in this area. And we will continue to want to have those conversations with you and your group.
That's good to hear. Anything else from your group that you want to, okay. I would appreciate the work and the sort of negotiated exchange there with us as well, and to keep that alive, because I think that some of that work, some of those questions that were asked by SEG were clearly asked by other members of the community, as you're well aware, and so it's helpful to have it all, out there in the open as you go forward.
Yeah, one of the major questions is what Jordan tried to talk about at the very beginning of the presentation, and addressing the room, which is the theme of our threat. So
The financing.
Funding, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
Yes, go
you
ahead.
mentioned the CSO and some of the work with that. As part of the engineering evaluation, was any consideration given to adding another drainage CSO out to be able to really help direct water in a different way versus relying on what's existing, which we know was built way before we were rebuilt? With the rise of all the residential buildings along Water Street and the additional flow of people and movement, which is going to be 24/7 versus a business model of people who are in and then out. Was there any consideration looking at any kind of additional infrastructure to actually support more drainage and the CSOs? Because I believe, I don't remember who said it, but they said that as we go on in time and sea level rises, it puts more pressure on the existing system, which means that we're just trying to plug the same holes again and again and again. So I guess that's my greatest question for this. Why have we not looked at adding to ease the burden and pressures on that one system?
Kelly, you're gonna take that, but the simple answer is we have looked at it. And then Heather can tell you.
Hi, introduce yourself, please.
I'm Heather Almeida with AECOM, dealing with the interior drainage project. We did think about all those things. One of the major issues with adding just more gravity capacity or gravity drainage capacity is that if we add another outfall, that outfall is going to face the same rising tides that are projected to happen in the future. So the most reliable way to supplement or to mitigate the lack of that gravity flow capacity is to introduce mechanical means of moving water. So it's pumping. And that's what we sort of presented today. Because just adding more gravity conveyance capacity is not going to attenuate or mitigate the street flooding that it would be projected to occur otherwise.
And you've taken into account all the new construction, the new additions, the new water flow that will be coming from the new buildings, including the one at 250 Water that will have most likely eventually perhaps be built.
That has not been part of the study thus far.
Okay.
Okay,
Are you able to elaborate a little more about what this pumping system would look like and how it would work?
It's probably a mix of an underground, majority an underground components in which there's a wet well, there's a pump draw flow from, and it's going to have some ancillary equipment associated with it.
Okay.
We're still in the very preliminary stages of that. We obviously need to coordinate with DEP and see where that goes and continue the study, but it's,
Right.
it's where we're seeing the trend.
Richard.
Yeah, it's a little hard to understand, the impact of what you're doing, other than trying to mitigate the basin effect. But just sort of carrying on that, currently we know that there's pollution impact as a result of any form of rain in the CSO structure that we have. Will this improve that, or will it not? Will it leave the status quo, make it worse, or make it better in terms of the amount of overflow that will be flowing into the rivers?
It is projected not to change the current level of CSO discharges.
So I would sort of go on with Tammy's question, add to it, that encourage the project and see what is possible in terms of actually making an improvement situation. Particularly since I think Tammy's point is that it's going to get a lot worse because of the amount of residential housing, and we would certainly want to see an improvement in the pollution impact.
Yeah, I think that's an answer that you can probably better provide. I can't at this minute. Yeah, I know. But I'm taking notes. I think it'll make sense for DEP to kind of give an overview of like how their drainage planning works and how they look at projections long term, and how the CSOs, like what the current kind of number of overflows there are in a given year, in a given time period, and like what the projection is for those increases. And I'll note too, for a pumping solution for a heavy storm event, you're pumping mostly rainwater too, right? So like, yeah, that's the same with their other projects like that. So we'll get a better answer on that one. I think the DEP probably has kind of in a more kit version, but we'll have it something specific to this neighborhood.
That's great.
Yeah, that would be great to come back with that, Catherine. Thanks a lot. That's a good idea. There's people online, so I'm going to start with Rosa Chang.
Can I, sorry, I just want to.
Well, let me.
Hold, write your question down, we'll come back to it, because I got another one too, Richard, so you and I are holding.
Hi, thank you. I have a couple of questions. One, on the interior drainage slide, it looked like there was major flooding at or around Peck Slip Park. And does it make sense to utilize that footprint as much as possible to act like a sponge or a cistern or to collect water? Like, isn't that like prime potential like bioswale location given the slide that you showed? And I do know that there is underground infrastructure, which is why Peck Slip Park ended up majority hardscape. But I'm wondering, is it possible to work around that and actually implement a major bioswale in that location? So that was question one. Question two is, has there been any consideration to do so at Gotham Park, closest to South Street? I I had hoped that we would be more helpful in that direction. Based on the slide that you showed, it looked like that was not really the area of most highest impact. It looked like it really was centered around Peck Slip Park, but just putting that up as an opportunity. And then I was also wondering why you were building a parallel and separate wall and tie in with SPCR instead of connecting. I mean, it looks like you are connecting into BMCR, but the weird thing is you connect into it, but then also do a whole separate fixed barrier for SPCR that's parallel to that. And I was wondering why, what is the need for the parallel double tie in versus a connection into BMCR and then you're done? And
Great
that's just because I
question, Rosa.
assume there's a reason why, because you guys are the engineers and I'm not, but I was curious as to what that was.
Yeah, those are great questions, actually, the same one. Can you answer any of those so that we're not relying on the next meeting for every
Yeah,
answer?
so we can definitely answer some of those. As far as considerations for Peck Slip, I think we can get back to you on those. But for the connection into BMCR and then crossing, Rosa, really, it has to do with the project being able to protect the neighborhood independent of itself. So it's what we call independent utility. And so that the project, if for BMCR for some reason goes offline or isn't there, this would protect the seaport.
It's a redundancy.
Yeah.
And for folks that monitoring the other projects where ESCR connects with BMCR on Montgomery Street, it's the exact same kind of condition where you have both projects meeting, but they're kind of tying into the floodplain independently on each side of the street.
Just a second, on those questions, did the Peck Slip and Gotham Park bioswale concept, was that something, that has come up before on this board, it was many years ago when Peck Slip was being designed. Is that something that, possibility, using those areas?
Yeah, I can answer. That's engineering. I am Richard Koch. I'm the project engineer for the job. I think green infrastructure is something we're looking at overall. So we actually have a study going now for the whole neighborhood to identify the areas that we're able to do that. We'll take Peck Slip recommendation with us and make a report back next time as to what locations are actually appropriate for green infrastructure.
Oh, that would be fascinating and incredibly important. Yeah, so you will be looking at, you will have
green infrastructure and we'll report back as to Peck Slip specific.
Peck Slip and Gotham Park, I think was asked. Okay, great.
And anywhere else.
Yeah.
All right, I see patient hands here. Michael Kramer.
Thank you. So my first question is about a pump station. I'm trying to learn more about pump stations. Where would it be located? Would it be located at the bottom of the hill or at the top of the hill?
That is currently still going to be developed and refined, and as we advance the design, we do know what is the estimated anticipated capacity that is required. We do not have any detailed design yet.
I'm talking just hypothetically. What's the best location for a pump station?
I think it's next to the.
Yeah, it should be next to the existing regulator, close to, that would be the most hydraulically logical location to place a pump.
And are
But
pump
outside-
stations expensive to build?
Could you repeat that?
Are they expensive?
Yeah,
There's flooding. Daily.
Yes.
Okay. All right. My next question is a question about water retention tanks. I know that Hoboken is using one with a park on top of it. Have you considered water retention tanks in the area of the basin?
Michael, real quick, I think Catherine had something from DEP.
Yeah, I was just saying on the pump stations, yeah, the expensiveness of the construction is relative to anything in construction, but I've just added to that pump stations are operational cost as well for DEP to maintain and then operate that system. Just adding that there is a long-term cost, a permanent cost on the construction of a pump station as well. And then the question was then what are retention tanks and how are they evaluated?
Yeah, I would say, Michael, I think water retention basins are part of the green infrastructure.
package. So when we report back on GI, we can include retention as well in that.
All right, and will you be considering privately owned as well as publicly owned land for a water retention tank?
Currently, we're only looking within the city right of way, public right of way for all infrastructure.
But you are planning for our future and it might be viable, and could you look into it?
What is the question? Look into putting the
A
infrastructure.
water retention tank in privately owned property as well as and/or publicly owned property. Because you have a very large privately owned property directly in the basin.
That has yet to be developed and could be a part of a long-term project that if the city was willing to partner on, for a partner who's looking for other things, perhaps that could be a win for many.
I'm not sure why Michael is not identifying the property in question as 250 Water Street, just in case that was.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my last question is, have you coordinated with city planning about the challenges at this site? And do you think, would you recommend, or have you even considered recommending to city planning a moratorium on development at this site?
Are you still referencing 250 Water or the neighborhood in
I'm
general?
referencing the interior drainage that was described in the basin and how, and I'm making the assumption that more development will just exacerbate the problem.
So the first question was, have we coordinated anything with city planning? And the answer is yes. We have had at least a meeting, if not two, with city planning about introducing the project and starting that relationship and discussions because this impacts them. But we have not had discussions about a moratorium on buildings in the district.
Because I would point out to my
Pardon?
fellow community board members that
I think you got it.
we're not only talking about 250 Water, we're also talking about 90 Gold. And how that would add to the problem. Not 100 Gold, I'm sorry, 100 Gold. Street.
This is Catherine from DEP. I think perhaps what I was describing is kind of like the DEP kind of, how DEP does their drainage modeling and projections for the future might better answer that question, I think in general. I do hear folks always like more development means like bad to your sewer system, and I don't know that that's always the case, right? So let us have DEP and our drainage folks that do that modeling and understanding the future development and how DEP in general works with city planning for overall zoning and impacts to, you know, increased housing. So let those experts there, which is not me, speak to that.
But from an engineering point of view or just a common sense point of view, the less new development, the less pressure we'll have on that basin.
Speaks to common sense.
All right, Michael.
Let Marty.
George just brought up a good point. Anything new would have to follow the stormwater building code. Like, so you're talking about, any sort of like interference with other sewer operations, they'd still have to be up, it would still have to be at code with the stormwater building code.
Understood. And then I guess city right of way is something that we would love to have actually a diagrammed understanding of. So for example, if you're looking to put a pump station at the New Market site, which we're all eyeing for a recreation center, only to find out that the city through the resiliency plans did not mention that they were looking at the New Market site for a pump station. It would be super important to understand that, where exactly in the quote city right of way you are considering pump station locations.
Yeah, is the pump station gonna be above ground?
Yeah.
There's some of it does, yeah.
And what kind of scale are we talking about? I'm just curious. General speaking.
Yeah, we're still following, we would follow DEP standards, so we would also have to conform to constraints of the. I don't think it'll be on New Market Pier, Tammy, but because it's gotta be closer to the regulator, which is closer to the FDR. There's lots of things that we would have to work on.
I was gonna say, a pump station on a pier structure is, I think we can say it's not happening.
Happening
So-
there, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that
was.
just saying that would do that
Okay.
on a pier.
But I will say you obviously, I would imagine be a critical part of the design here, so it would be good to share that earlier than.
Yeah, I mean, we're not there in the design. We are sharing as our promise to be transparent and come early and often with thoughts and ideas. And there's a lot of constraints. We have to also keep view corridors clear, right? So that's why we keep saying that things can shift, things can move. We're coming with everything we got as we have it.
Yeah, just that you have opportunity for community
Keep it up.
input, which sometimes can be valuable.
I think it will be.
So. yeah,
Right,
just
but I
to
think
let
we
us
need to
know.
nail down, here's where it could be. Now, what do you think? That's where-
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, let me, got people who haven't heard from you. It's just David Sheldon. Welcome. Yeah.
There we go. Okay, two questions, if I may. One, you have again emphasized the importance of preserving and enhancing the historic character of the district, as well as access and interaction with the waterfront. What consideration have you given? I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback at my end. To any maritime use between the prior site of the new market building and Brooklyn Bridge Beach? Any maritime use contemplated in that stretch?
Between the New Market Pier, can you clarify the location between the New Market Pier and the Brooklyn Bridge?
Beach.
Former site of the, and Brooklyn Bridge Beach. That would be Jerry Driscoll Law.
And the maritime use you're asking for, so.
Any maritime use, has it been
Vehicular
contemplated?
Boat access. Yeah.
As of right now, I think for the maritime use, we're not deeply going into that just because that's the footprint of the FIDI master plan. So we really do kind of defer to the FIDI team to speak to the maritime use plan for their structures currently. Just because our match time will extend outward, so anything that we might plan will hopefully in the near future be built out through the FIDI project.
Well, it does seem to me if you're raising the bulkhead at the water site by another 5 feet, that will impact any maritime planning from the FIDI Seaport plan. So maybe you want to communicate with them on that.
So as part of the longer term plan, FIDI is looking at all of the maritime activity, basically from the Brooklyn Bridge all the way to the Battery. And we've done kind of extensive inventory of existing uses, also held workshops with mariners in the maritime industry. The plan does contemplate a new pier, Pier 19, we're calling it, that is just south of the Brooklyn Bridge. It aligns pretty much with Excellent.
And it is a commercial pier?
No,
or
No, it hasn't been, so all we're looking at is kind of general capacity and replacing in kind the capacity that exists today. But it has not been programmed as a commercial pier. Its use has not been determined yet. But it is a good spot for a pier. It was historically a pier in that area. And there's, you know, even the kind of existing maritime activity in between, you know, just regular ferries, the need for historic ships leads us to believe that we need additional capacity at that waterfront.
Additional.
Okay, wait, let's just.
David, and then I'm
Yeah.
gonna say something.
Go ahead, say David, and then we're gonna.
So I want to underscore from my own notes that there is a need for additional maritime capacity. The other question, maybe this is too far into the weeds. I believe you have calculations that have been used to calculate probable sea level rise within certain time spans. You have another set of calculations to estimate possible storm surge. These would all be over and above the calculation of current sea level. What do you use to determine that base figure of current sea level? The time delay on this is killing me. I'm hearing myself 2 seconds after I open my mouth, as painful as it is.
Were you listening? He's just asking, what are we using as our base for sea level?
It's your data.
There are, right, so it's just the elevations of the battery.
Again?
2 point,
No, not the math. No, in the weeds, hell there is. We're getting the information from the battery, right?
Marty,
That's what he's asking.
Marty, you're gonna need another one.
oh, it's,
I know, I'm gonna bring.
Where, the data that we're getting, the NOAA.
yeah, the NOAA gauge at the battery. And
Maybe I should have just taken it.
Sorry.
So are you able to hear us? There is a NOAA gauge at the battery that provides a projection over years, and we take those measurements.
Its number is 851.75.
All right, Tammy, one more from Tammy, then I've got Richard.
I'm not going to take up more of this meeting trying to get that clarified. I am familiar with the tidal range. You got to pick a number to start with.
What number did you guys use?
Oh, that's what you're asking.
That's what he's asking.
The specific from a table. I don't have that handy.
Does the gentleman at the end?
No, that's what he was trying to remember. Ezra maybe can look it up and we can come back to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Be fine. I don't want to hold this up,
Okay, so.
but I would like to know.
You to remind us to make sure, and you will, with a list of the things that we've discussed, to get back to us on.
Yeah, and we've had that in the previous presentation when we started. That's what establishes the 2100 and where they are, but we'll circle back.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, were you?
So I just had one more little comment on the CSO. I mean, obviously, all of this we're focused on, and DEP and everybody else, we're focused on the inland protection, resiliency issue. But this is the Environmental Protection Committee, and so anything that we can do to not forget pollution impact to the rivers. If this is an opportunity to actually make a difference, I would hope that we can take advantage of that opportunity because they come few and far between. So I just wanted to encourage that. Statement.
Good point.
I have a response for David.
Yes,
If that's okay.
David Sheldon, you're getting a response. Come back.
Live,
Go ahead.
right now, yeah. So taken from the NOAA tide gauge from the battery, the mean, the MLW, which is the mean low water, is elevation -2.5 and mean high water is 2.7. Those are the starting elevations that we used, and then we use the SLRs on top of them. So for 2050, your SLRs, I believe 23 inches. For 2080, I believe it was 45 inches, and for 2100, 60 inches on top of those values.
Okay.
You're using the mean high level.
Yeah.
I held the reason we high water.
Yeah.
6.7. You got that, David? We're set? Okay. I know you've been asking that a long time. Okay. Jeff.
No, back to the sewers. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
The kind of pump station we're talking about here, is this one that runs only during a storm, or will it be constantly running in order for the sewer system to function?
It could be, it would be an emergency pump station. It's not a pump station that would run 24/7.
Okay.
If the 24/7 operation, the standard operation is how the system currently works, right? Everything flows to the
Right.
interceptors. And in dry
Comes
weather,
out.
dry weather flow, it flows to the interceptors, it goes to the Manhattan pump station, and it goes to the Newtown Creek wastewater treatment plant, or waste recovery facility. I can't get the name right, but yeah, so normal operations, everything gets treated. And if weather flows, that's when you do have flows. And when those extra flow is in the system, the regulator is what determines it's too much flow. And so you get outflows during a heavy rain event or In some neighborhoods with not heavy rain event, you get usually have those ones, but it's
It's a public question.
Yeah, Tammy, you want anything
I'll wait
else?
till after the public because I do have some things that I'm.
Okay, Catherine?
Yes.
Fay Hughes.
Thank you very much. A great meeting. I have 7 simple questions. One is, since the FIDI C4 segment did get brought up and there was one slide, do we have a status update on whether the 15 million has been secured in this cycle to continue the project or not?
I do not have a status update. The executive budget has not been published. I believe
Published May 1st.
May 1st.
So basically, the Seaport Resiliency Plan is all we get possibly in the short run, because there's no money, to clarify, to even build the FIDI Seaport. So I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. The second question is, for July 4th, the battery segment. Do we know what portion of that will be opened up? Because it said summer 2025 for a portion of the battery.
We can get that answer.
And that's something that I know that team is coming in May.
Yeah,
So,
Okay, great, okay.
Yeah, the July 4th.
Okay, so the third question is groundwater flooding. Is the Seaport segment going to address groundwater flooding at all? Because in our 101, that was the third flooding that was pointed out.
groundwater flooding is not, I mean, it is contemplated part of, when we're thinking of sea level rise, but it is not explicitly kind of part of the design, part of the adaptation. It is, we're addressing sea level rise, we're addressing coastal risks, we're addressing extreme rain, but no, that is I would argue, a much more challenging, if not impossible, to address on a district-wide scale.
And the fourth question is, how deep do you anticipate the Seaport resiliency project to go underground? Street grade.
The seepage barrier.
Yes.
That's what you're asking. So I knew you were gonna ask that, but I don't have an answer for you
Yeah,
yet.
I know, I always ask that one.
Because we are planning to do soil borings. And then from those results, we'll be able to take that and give you a definitive answer.
So is it like 10 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet, just like a ballpark? We don't know, okay.
When are you soil boring?
I'm sorry?
You said soil boring. When are you?
When are we doing that, right? We will definitely notify everyone when we do. We're in discussions with a driller, with a contractor, so not for another couple months, maybe 2 months or so.
I'm just gonna point out the obvious conditions of what happened just north of us with our neighbors, with the building of the new Disney building, with the borings and the damage to the historic firehouse. That was one building that's potentially demolished by the amount of construction drilling that was right there. You are in the historic Seaport District with every old building for the most part. So it's critical that we talk about boring depths.
No,
and,
of course.
And
And
effects.
locations.
And locations and notifications and building inspectors and outside inspectors, et cetera, et cetera.
No, it's a good point, and I think something we're paying a lot of attention to is trying to. Why I can't get a definitive schedule to you about the soil borings is because we're going through every hoop we can get through to try to find anything of record plans. Like right now, we're drilling down through the state's records. We've been to the record room for the city. We've been talking to the MTA. We're going everywhere we can to get the information to eliminate as many borings as we can.
Okay, I have.
That was
Quick questions, okay. So this length along the waterfront for the seaport is 0.3 miles? It's roughly 5 city blocks. Approximately. And what part of that area does the city actually own? Of the seaport segment behind there, like how many acres would you say belongs to the city?
within, I'm not sure I understand, so like.
What is considered the city right of way that you're working, like how much space is that? So approximately.
So,
I can
for
calculate
example,
that.
the city entertainment group, you lease, right? Okay, so that's what I'm trying to get.
So, okay, I think that's a great question, because it's something we're going through as well on our side. We're doing what we call a jurisdiction map, where we're trying to understand who owns what. Somebody might have a lease, there might be an air right, there might be sub rights, there's all sorts of things we're sorting through, and we meet bi-weekly with DOT and Parks, State DOT now and DEP. And obviously EDC, and we're still sorting through that. And a lot of that has to go through their legal and their acquisitions, and we're trying to get that answer and hopefully have a map at some point.
Right. Okay.
But the math of it, I
I
don't
would
know.
just add though, yeah, the math, we can figure that out, but in general, the city right away are these streets, right? And then as you guys know, on the waterfront, you've got, like city owned
Yes.
property.
Right.
So there's a kind of combination of things. There's the right of way, which is your classic street width. There's property, and then there's the leasehold, which is city owned property. So yeah, it's a mishmash.
I think because it comes down to insurance. Again, we've spoke about the insurance
Mhm.
at, the last stakeholder meeting, and Alice was there and Tammy was there and some other folks were there. And can you just go into depth about the insurance crisis we have here in our country? I mean, there are insurance companies that are not insuring in California due to the wildfires. There are insurance companies that are leaving Florida.
Yeah.
And people who want mortgages. It's very, very difficult situation. We haven't addressed that, the financial crisis here and the urgency to get these projects moving forward.
No, you gave a good answer on this last time.
Yeah, I mean, New York is not immune to what is going on writ large in the country in terms of the insurance industry being in crisis. Premiums are only going up. Those costs are passed on to residents and renters. And adding to the affordability crisis. You know, insurers are pulling out of entire states or markets. It's possible that, you know, there's a future in which anyone within half a mile of a coastline won't be eligible for certain insurers. That's all of Lower Manhattan is half from a coastline. So I think, you know, we do need to follow the market. New York City, with our leadership, is getting a much better kind of communication line with the insurance industry, which is really, really important because we need to understand where it's going. You know, this is about our economic viability and the economic future of our central business districts. So.
And 50,000 residents who live on the east side. And if it floods on the east side, don't forget about the underpass tunnel and the subways that flooded before.
The infrastructure also is at stake, even if it's uninsured. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other sobering news you want to say?
I mean, I think.
Don't go to 6, Kevin.
To address Tammy's concern, I think she might have a different outcome, but if we need more sunlight, is there any update on what's happening to the FDR south of Brooklyn Bridge? Would that?
We do need more sunlight. We do. We learned that the plants are subject to a shade study there. I do not have an update on that, but thank you for bringing it up. Thank you for continuing to bring it up. This all goes into kind of our long-term planning for Lower Manhattan.
Okay, you had.
So I guess that's gonna bring me back to, we're doing all this long-term planning. The FDR is the elephant in the room. It can either be used as a part of, which we've seen you doing with what the state DOT has said is needed for access, for repair, for everything. It can be used as part of the barrier plan, or it can go away. So is there, I know there's no news necessarily, but how flexible are the plans based on this? Because it is a very tight space. Obviously, you know, we were excited about the Five Eyes Seaport Master Plan because it was building out.
Yeah.
So that would give us more land, which would give us more light, which would give us more trees, hopefully, and other things like that.
Yeah.
So question, I guess, you know, there's one thought in that, how flexible are these plans? And once you get to 30%, we understand from our experiences on the West, once you get to 30%, you're basically done. It's about picking out the wallpaper.
Okay, well, I'll address the FDR thing first, which is that, just to clarify, when you say part of, yes, the FDR as in planning around it as an elevated aqueduct is part of the plan, but no part of the FDR structure is serving as a coastal flood defense structure. So I just want to clear up that, like, we're not actually connecting into the structure, and therefore it is an integral part of it. For the Five Eyes Seaport project, we have always maintained that it is independent of the aqueduct of the FDR south of the Brooklyn Bridge, and it will work with or without it in the future. Seaport can answer,
We're not going anywhere with that right now.
Okay.
Well, my second comment is there is extraordinary need for water use. We understand that. But there is an even greater use with the thousands of residents that are coming here for open space. We had an amazing fellow from the Fund for City of New York who did population. I don't know if you were on the other day when she presented. It was really sort of petrifying for the residential growth that we have and the lack of open space. Open space is not, and Jordan, don't be mad at me when I say this, is not pathways to get to a ferry. Open space is passive and active recreation. So I am a little frustrated every time we talk about Pier 19 that is a replacement, and that is still the same thing. If we're adding, let's find a way to add active and passive recreation beyond rooftops that are a last minute add. And quite frankly, when we're looking at all of the resiliency plans, it doesn't necessarily take a look at that as a primary driver, because you can. I think back to what Rory initially planned in the Battery. She planned an incredible children's playground where the water would flow and redirect. And they did a lot of really interesting things in that particular space to be able to accommodate water and rise and other things. So I find when we're having these conversations, they're very engineering based, and that's awesome, but we're not actually taking a look at how it could add and fit into the public realm as additional open, active, or passive space. In particular, I'm looking and saying, okay, well, how is it that I can get to and sit my family on that beach? The Brooklyn Bridge Beach was money paid and money gotten with our council member and our borough president to be able to activate on that beach. Not an overlook, not a estuarium. It's supposed to be people with feet on beach. We go to the west side because we don't have anything like Pier 25, Pier 26. There's not even the active walkways and esplanades as beautiful as Battery Park City. I get that. There's no South Cove. There's no North Cove, in fact, on the east side. It's all commercial. So I know I'm rambling, but I ask that when you're looking at the designs and you come back, you find a way to capture markets and work with the community for what we've been asking for. We want Pier 17 to be incredibly successful, but you know what? To get people to go there every day, it'd be great if we had a rec center so we had a captive audience and they would go and hang out around the pier so they could, while their kids were playing ball, or that there were 1,010 things to do and we're not all going to that one patch of green up at the East River. So that's when I'm looking at these plans, I just find missed opportunities every time I see all the hardscape that's there and just terrace overlooks and other things. It just doesn't seem like we're protecting New York with the thought of growth in New York, and we are growing. There is no stopping that.
That was a very good reminder. And
I'm back.
Thought the
Sorry.
public space. No, important, really important point, needless to say.
My flag.
So I think you were designated as the person with the last slide.
Yes. I guess I should introduce myself now that I've been speaking. I'm Alexis Taylor. I'm a Vice President of Climate Resilience in our Neighborhood Strategies Department at EDC. I'm also Project Director for the FIDI Seaport Climate Resilience Plan. And even though it is just one slide, I'm joined today by Harrison Jane, who is an engineer with Arcadis, who is our prime consultant, and Erin Tao, who, among other things, leads our engagement workstream. Should be online if you want to
Let me see where they are so I can.
enter her. Great.
You said Erin Tao?
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? I apologize.
Nope. That should do it.
Everyone.
Okay, Erin's up.
Great.
and Let me find your share. Is this it?
Yes, it is. All right, so two things I want to speak to today. Next slide. So I will be speaking and acknowledging your design resolution passed by CB1, received by us, has been shared with the design team. And then I actually just wanted to start with this slide because I think some of the really kind of critical and urgent feedback that we received from you all as we engaged in our battery tie-in workshop was that the materials were very good, but that they needed a broader audience. And in particular, we really needed to reach more stakeholders and the general public in order to bring them along with our thinking about our alternative alignments, thinking about what we want the future of that area to look like. And so in response to that feedback, what you see on the slide is we've actually expanded and extended our community engagement and public engagement around, in particularly what we are planning for the battery tie-in. And so I think in your resolution, you had asked that we do more on site and also use of post boards and social media to gain a more diverse audience. So the first thing we're proposing to do is multi-day tabling, actually in the battery on site in the public space. We're working with parks right now to identify where in the battery would be best to capture the most foot traffic. But the idea here is that we would take materials that have been developed for the previous workshops, which you've seen, in particular the ones where we really ask how are people using the battery now, what is their kind of most cherished various components of the battery, favorite spaces, favorite activities, and how might they use the battery in the future. So this tabling, as I said, will be across multiple days. The reason is that we want to have different times of day. So we want to capture like a lunch crowd. We want to capture crowds that come after work. And then I believe we also want to do a weekend so that we have kind of the, the different users that would come at different times. That tabling also gives us an opportunity to promote the larger FIDI Seaport project. Hopefully gain greater support and understanding of how critical the project is. And then we will also be advertising upcoming public events that will be occurring in the summer and culminating in a public open house in the fall. So the event 2 that you see up there, which we are proposing to have during the summer, will again be a workshop, but it's going to be a public workshop open to the general public. We will not be holding it at EDC where everyone has to put their name into security. We actually are hoping to have a ground floor space and or community space where people can really drop in and don't need to RSVP. We are still looking for a space. So if you all have any suggestions of schools or anything else, but we're really going to structure that to have the kind of most flexibility in terms of when people can stop by and also how they can provide feedback as members of the general public. A lot of those materials will be materials that, as part of our climate coalition and having participated in previous workshops, you will have seen already, but we think the general public needs to see them. And then also we will be taking it even further in terms of presenting some concept designs. Then our event 3 kind of gets us back to what was our original sequence, which is a 3rd workshop. This will be with the Climate Coalition and members of CB1 again. So this is a smaller group, but what we really rely on this group for and have always is to vet the public materials before and in time to revise them for a large public open house in September, which will really be the culmination of all of this design work and then highlighting every component of FIDI, much like we did in our public open house. Was it last summer? 2 summers ago? I can't remember. The one that was at the Battery Maritime Building. So all of this will culminate, all of the information feedback will be generated into this public open house. And then what you see all the way on the right is we will also be doing an educational roadshow. And if Aaron, if your audio is working, we're still very much in the development. We're developing kind of what this is across the course of the next 4 months. But Aaron, do you want to just speak a little bit about the educational roadshow?
Yeah, sure. We're thinking it's going to be a combination of sort of in-person tabling events. We're really trying to leverage some of the existing relationships we have with some CBOs in the area. Also looking for additional sort of partnership opportunities, trying to join in on existing events that we can table at, get the word out. And then we're also looking into doing advertisements and other sort of more passive forms of engagement. Since it's so educationally focused, some things we're looking at are potentially getting ads up onto New York City Ferry, Link NYC, Staten Island Ferry, just to have some information around the project for commuters and people who are using the waterways. We actually had our first tabling event that happened last week. We partnered at an Earth Day event on Thursday, had a really good turnout, engaged with probably about 100 people, had some really good conversations. So we're excited for sort of what's to come with the Educational Roadshow.
Do local farmers markets?
Yes, absolutely. We did one a few months ago, and we'd be happy to set up a table at the local farmers markets. We always get good people there.
So over here, we discussed PS 150, which is the public school that you haven't had an event at. It's right next to the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel.
Yeah.
And you know that a lot of, it also has a catchment area of some of the local residents as well, which might live in Southern Vine.
Okay, great. We'll look into that.
Great. This is it. So we done with your presentation?
Well, I did just want to thank you and acknowledge the resolution that you passed on design. We take these very seriously. We review them. And I just always appreciate the thoughtfulness with which you guys provide this feedback, and it becomes part of the record. And of course, we document it and respond to it either in real time or making sure that it's carried forward through the design. So I did just want to acknowledge that pretty much everything that was requested in regards to the Battery Southern tie-in are things that we will be addressing over the next few months as part of this phase of work. There are requests that we address all of it as part of the next phase of work. And so a lot of it will be documented and then part of the next phase of design once it is funded. I want to reassure Tammy that 30% design does not lock everything in. So there's still time to incorporate these design considerations in the next phase. The few other things that I highlighted that we are treating kind of need to urgently be addressed right now and we're prioritizing is we're also looking at the Southern Ferry Hub through meetings with TGI in order to address some of their capacity concerns and access concerns. And we've had very productive meeting. We're meeting again with them the week of May 5th. And we believe we have some pretty good design solutions for them. You can click that. And then you would ask for kind of additional renderings, 3D perspectives that really make the current design status more palatable to the public. And that's something that we'll be working on over the next few months. And of course, those visual materials will be a big part of our open house.
Not necessarily palatable, just clear. Is the battery, so this, all of that description was just about the battery, correct?
Yes, yes.
These events, and,
Except the open house is the battery plus everything for the 5i Seaport.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the alignments, how is that going to be presented in the meetings? The first one, the tabling.
Yes, so in the tabling, we will be doing a combination, so we don't have a captive audience, as in they'll listen to us for, an hour plus, as you would in our workshop. But we will be summarizing both, I believe, in board form and in handouts, everything that was covered in workshop 1 and 2. So workshop 1 with those 3 alignments, and kind of understanding the underground infrastructure. We will be explaining those alignments. Harrison, I guess, is gonna have to live at the table because he's the person who's best.
Is it going to be a fait accompli that the one that you're, in other words, is it still
Right.
feasible and open to the public to pick one of these alignments, or that's been done?
We're not asking the public to pick an alignment.
Well,
It's not
or
like a vote. It still remains that we have a recommended alignment because of cost impacts, technical feasibility. But the public is still welcome to, give their honest opinion on what the alignment is, to discuss, where they see like impacts need to be
Let me give you-
addressed or mitigated.
Sorry to interrupt, but can, at this point, can that alignment change?
I guess I'm wondering how it would change, because it's not really like we're getting, unlike kind of design feedback, we're not really going with a vote or broad public opinion. I think if there was a ton of negative feedback on what our recommended alignment is, we would try and address that by making tweaks. But the cost alone and technical infeasibility of the alignments that need to bridge the major MTA infrastructure make it so that at least EDC is confident in our recommendation that, as Hope said, the least bad option of a lot of difficult options is to go through the battery.
Okay, I need to monopolize the questions.
I would say when you are tabling for the public, I don't believe the public understands, when it comes to Seaport coastal resiliency, how big of a wall will be by the Imagination Playground. That's a big safety, security, air and light issue. I don't know anybody from any of the tabling that you've done who thought running walls up the middle of the historic district, even with glass panels, looked great in any stroke of the imagination. So if those are alignment things that are not changing, then I think you need to be much clearer with sample images of what it's gonna look like to really have honest feedback. And if you're gonna leave them at the table to get torn apart, at least have it be an honest conversation. Because I think that those are things over there that are hard, and the same kind of thing in the battery. When we were looking at the 3 different kind of alignments that you had, it really didn't show what the effect on the park would be. You weren't seeing that the urban farm would be completely gone and would have, you weren't seeing what a 15-foot rise looked like comparative to where we are today. And I think that that is not a fair engagement point with the public if they can't really understand. We sit in these meetings, and for the most part, sometimes I'm still confused, as when I looked at the one where it showed the street rise, I still don't think it looked, I conceptually questioned the orange spaces on there for what it really looked like until the next one, which showed me that the whole road was being raised. From a longer perspective, that's not clear. And I've sat in more meetings than I would ever care to have wanted to.
I think, so we will run the materials, we always run materials past you to get your feedback. I think we can pretty confidently say that we're not gonna have sections for the general public to interpret in the battery. it's just not the right level of engagement, but the impacts certainly are something that we've actually like enumerated, qualified, quantified in terms of impacts to trees and other things, and those will be shared.
Alice has a name for it, I can't remember what it is.
What is it?
I'm hungry. It was like it was like the walkthrough view, that what you would see from a human scale. Walk
Ground level.
and
I don't remember what exactly our resolution stated, and I think I wrote it, but I think it's unfortunate to hear that it's a fait accompli on this, because the community really hasn't had an opportunity at all. I mean, I remember Hope, who works for the Conservancy that you're referring to, had no idea this was happening. So that was shocking to me, and it just seems like it's a little early in the game to say, that's the one. I know that, I'm speaking personally for myself.
Yeah.
I actually did challenge and think better spend a little more money and not destroy the entire park, but I could be wrong. But anyway, I just wish that we're still a little bit more open at this phase where you're just really basically introducing the complete transformation of the battery of New York City
Right.
with this
Yeah.
plan. This
So
is-
I think fait accompli is a little bit of a farther along than we
Yes,
are,
you're right.
especially without funding. I think we have a recommendation.
Okay.
And that's from our technical experts and our consultants. But you all have the same information that we have, that we're basing the recommendation on, and it's really technical and cost drivers that we feel are compelling and strong enough, in particular that we're not positive that it is technically feasible to bridge those 100+ year MTA tunnels without completely reconstructing them. And so I think we can better explain that this is the technical recommendation, but it doesn't mean that there's not still, I mean, there's a reason we looked at those alignments, and it's so that everyone has the same information that we have.
It's
in
just, yeah,
weighing
I think
various
it'll come up a lot, and I think it's the introduction to the public to see this, and the city of New York, not just this neighborhood.
Yeah.
To what this park will become, and I think everyone's gonna wanna know, really, really understand why.
Agree.
That's really what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any other
Rosa's saying.
questions? Oh, Rosa Chang. Yep, I think you may get the last word. Hit it, Rosa.
Hey Alexis, since you asked for locations, and I see George sitting right across from you, on this super duper screen here. I was wondering if you had considered Pier 17 as a location to do your open house events, because I feel like it would be so impactful, frankly, to be literally on the water where you can see how the level is rising. If Seaport Entertainment Group has open space that they may be willing to utilize for this effort. I obviously will not be speaking for them, but just as a thought. Then sort of related to that, honestly, it looks like you guys are working hard to avoid protecting like the Tin Building and Pier 17. And I was wondering why that is, because it seems a little exclusionary.
So Pier 17 has.
Pier 17, I sort of get it, because it's sticking out over the water.
A huge amount of investment has been made in Pier 17 in order to have it at an elevation that will not be affected.
Okay, so it's actually safe, so it's not at risk. And the same is true for the Tin Building then?
I have to defer to someone who understands the topography.
It's the same. It's at a flood.
Okay, then the second option that I was thinking about was the Battery Maritime Building, which you had the event at before, and I think it was actually awesome. Our community had mentioned, different things that you could even make it better in terms of communication to the public, notification, signage, et cetera, but I thought that was like a very successful open house kind of event. And then the third location I was thinking about was Trinity Church Wall Street actually has a very large open space. I don't know if you've ever been in or have reached out to them. And then the last thing I would say is that I request that you make it multi-day and like very open and expanded hours, because obviously between work, families, different work schedules, it's really hard to make the time, but I know so many people are interested in being involved in this really, really crucial conversation for everybody that lives and works down here. And so the more a variety of opportunities that there are for engagement and understanding and education, and, you know, having the ability to bring all of our school kids down, if we're able to give the schools notice, I think that would be really wonderful, because it's something that we all need to work towards as a community, right? Because it's beyond just us, right? It is literally our future and our children. So as much of it as we can have, we would love to have it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I
That was
think we will do whatever we can to maximize the number of people, age, diversity, and that can include extended hours. I think also something that we did in the past, but maybe in the not most recent open houses, we actually had special programs for school children where we walked them through kind of with their own tour and own programming. A lot of effort goes into making these materials, and so we are absolutely intend to get as broad an audience as possible.
We'd be happy to connect you to any and all of the local schools.
Well, this was great. A good way to end. And one other venue, but it seems unlikely, is the Seaport Museum that gets no attention and would be wonderful. I think there's some folks in there. But I suspect that their spaces might be limited. Anyway, a huge thank you. I don't think there are any other questions online. We're going to get out of here before 8:30. I'm happy to say I really appreciate. Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
It's fine, I got it answered.
Oh, wow. Okay, how convenient. Well, thank you. What a crowd. It's really nice to see and know all these people over these last 10 years. And we'll be seeing you soon again, undoubtedly. So we are not running a resolution committee, but we will be reaching out to all of you for the follow-ups by Zach Bomber, our district manager. That's great.
So is the meeting adjourned?
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.